So before we jumped to the project that I wanted to do to fix a couple issues behind me, I thought I would go over some things with the back to basics of Tasmota. And one of the very things that a lot of people don't know, well, besides that I can't pronounce it, is Tasmota actually stands for something. Well, actually, it stands for the developer's first initial, so Theo, then his last name, which I won't try to pronounce, Sonoff, MQTT, OTA. So that's Tasmota. Now, I know a lot of you Tasmota pros are probably, hey, I don't really need this. Just get to the cool stuff, Travis. Well, hang around. You may learn some additional things. And, well, if you don't want to, you just hit the like button or something. And I don't know, maybe take a nap for a little bit. If you don't, I'm going to send the OG to come flash all your stuff back to stock to you. Yeah, hit that button. So what exactly is it? Well, think of if you've got all these different devices. You've got light switches, fan controllers, more switches with 3 buttons, these little smart relays, the Shelly relays that actually go in the wall, the Sonoff Basics that some people did not so well putting them in the wall in the past, infrared controllers, smart plugs that do power monitoring, whole home power monitoring, with all using Tasmota. Now, these devices come from several different companies, and they come with their stock software on the little chip. Now, the little chip has Wi-Fi built in, and think of it just like a small little single board computer, but it's on one small chip. But it's not that powerful, but it doesn't need to do a whole lot. Well, why can't I just use what comes with it? I mean, they designed the device, right? Yeah, you could. And say even the Shelly ones. Now, Shelly is probably the one that I will say is going to stand out here because they are truly local. And what I mean by local, and I talk about being local and make it yours, is, hey, can I take a product such as a smart plug or say the Sonoff Basic, take it out of the box, have no internet connection, just have electricity to power it up, and can I put it on my network without any application on my phone, and can I get it into my network and view or use it or whatnot, the data on it, or control the relay without using the internet? Because that's really stupid when you have to rely on someone else's server to just control something across the room. Yeah, I know sometimes we don't have reliable internet in some places. Some people are blessed to have that, but hey, sometimes things break. I mean, hell, even Tuya had their entire freaking system break, and everybody on Reddit and everything was like, oh, all my stuff, I can't turn my light bulbs on. Guess what? I didn't have that issue because all of my stuff, I keep it local and make it mine. I don't have to worry about someone else's server to control stuff in my house. And that's a lot of what Tasmota is behind, is making it local, open source. Tons of different developers have added features, and you can add sensors and do stuff that was never thought about with some of these devices that are straight out of the box. I mean, for instance, now I had to change the chip on this because of that Tuya company, and that's a whole nother soapbox, but this runs Tasmota and it does Bluetooth scanning. This is a bedside lamp with a touch sensor on it that you change the colors and whatever for like reading. But guess what? It does Bluetooth scanning and it picks up Bluetooth from temperatures and humidity sensors. I mean, who does that? Well, we do. What for? Well, I can put one of these little sensors in my bathroom, and then now I can drive an automation that directly tells one of these relays to turn on the vent because the humidity is too high. And well, what benefit is that? Well, going to lower the cost on cooling, and you won't have as much humidity in the bathroom, which is, causes mold and a whole other issues. So you're really saving yourself money by doing this automation, and it's all local using some products such as these that are very inexpensive. So how do you get it, and how do you put it on these different things and devices? Well, some of these devices actually have pins already on them, such as this is a little Sonoff SV, and it's used for, I like to use these for like garage door openers and stuff. Same thing with like the Shelly One, they have pins on them. You can do an over the air, which is just use your browser, and you can change the software on these very easily. Kudos to Shelly for doing that. And there's some other stuff for if you really don't want to get your geek on. There's companies such as Cough HA. They do, I think right now, some light bulbs that are pre-flashed with ESP Home, or you can put Tasmota. ESP Home is another open source product that goes on these ESP chips. And there's another company which I have covered is Atom, and they have several different smart plugs and light switches and light bulbs. And I even saw they did come out with that BR30 bulb, so kudos to them as well. And they're all pre-flashed, so you don't have to do the solder thing. Nope, you can, and there are these options that you don't have to get your solder on. A lot of times you can just use your web browser. Now, of course, there is some other stuff where you do have to get your solder on, but just depends on how deep you want to go. But I can tell you, once you start to do some of this, it's very addicting that you're in control of your destiny of what your products and what your money you spend, because it's just going to be yours. You don't have to worry about somebody saying, oh, we're going out of business. Well, so we're going to show you how to do a few things on and control things with Tasmota and run through some of the basics on the GUI because it's cool. It does have a little web server right on the chip. Now I am going to, in this session, reference the docs a decent amount, but it's a good little resource to go through and dig through. You'll be surprised how much they've packed into this small little processor that's on these chips. I mean, hell, whoever thought you'd have a whole full web browser and a whole 9 yards on a light bulb? Really? Yeah, that's a thing. So I want to go touch on this. You used to have to go download like Tasmotizer or even use some command line tools or stuff. They've really made it easy using the Chrome-based browser install. You just click it and go through and hook up your USB flasher and you pick the version you want. Now do pay attention that the regular Tasmota builds, and there are a couple different ones from the infrared, the light, the sensors, and we'll go over probably some of those, but just typically go with the Tasmota one if you have the ESP8266 or the 8285, which those are the most common chips at this time. If you do have the ESP32, you'll notice there's all kind of different ESP32 ones. There are ESP32C3s, and there is a whole documentation and table of which build to use for the ESP32, and it's pretty straightforward. Now, if you really don't know, come on, jump down into my Discord. The link's down below. There's a bunch of people in there that will help you out, including myself. If you ever have any doubts, we'll tell you exactly and how to flash whatever you need to. So once you do add Tasmota device to your Wi-Fi, and yes, these all do use Wi-Fi, and don't worry about the whole naysayers of, well, it's going to bog down your Wi-Fi. Well, they probably have a very old router that's probably 10, 15 years old. Some of the newer ones, you shouldn't have any issues, and especially if you have a couple access points, mesh or whatever. I mean, I've got over 120 devices between 2 access points, and they're still screaming for more. You'll see in the default, it starts off as Sonoff Basic. Now, we don't have a Sonoff Basic. I actually have a Martin Jerry just single light switch. It has 2 LEDs, 1 relay, and 1 button. Now, I did flash this previously with 2-year convert. You can still do them with 2-year convert, but there's only a small number of devices that you can do that. And this one also allows you to solder to it, or you can use a jig or whatever. It's pretty simple to do these switches. So once you're in there, you'll notice you get an on and off button, but again, this isn't a Sonoff Basic, so that's probably not going to work. And we'll show you how to do all the things with it. Now, a very important one is if you go to the information tab, because if you're in the Discord asking for help, People are going to ask you, hey, what version? Oh, hey, I'm running 9.50 Tasmota. And you can put the parentheses. That'll tell us if you're running the full build or whatever of it. And there's some other information we may ask down here, such as the topic and flash size, but that's really going to get into advanced. There's not a whole lot to do in the information tab. Now, firmware upgrade. This is going to default to the Tasmota OTA server. So, of course, you do need internet access to use in this OTA server. Now, if you want to do one local, you're advanced enough to do that, go right ahead. But it will default to the stock one. You can just hit start upgrade and it will upgrade straight from the internet and pull the new bin file in case there's, say, a new release or whatever. And you can go through here and push one manually just by hitting choose file, browse to it, and push it over. Just make sure you know what you're doing and read the documentation on upgrading. You never know when there's some weird breaking change, but there really hasn't been some major breaking changes with Tasmota in the past because they're pretty careful on doing that. Now, in the configuration tab, the configure module, yeah, we'll get to that one. Configure Wi-Fi, that's where you, of course, you can put in multiple SSIDs. Say, for instance, you're going to plan to swap out your router and you don't want to have to worry about, hey, I've got 20, 30 different devices on your Wi-Fi. You could put in that new Wi-Fi network 2 along with the password. And as soon as you swap out your router, the devices will automatically drop and pick up and go to the other one. It's a pretty cool feature. And you can send it to all of them using MQTT at once, but that might be in a different video than this. That's a little more advanced. Now, configure MQTT. It's pretty simple. You go in here and put in your MQTT, which is Mosquito. You don't really have to get involved with it, especially, say, the Home Assistant users, because it's pretty much automated with the Home Assistant Tasmota integration. You just need to make sure and put in your MQTT broker name and password, and then make sure it connects. And that's pretty much it that you need to touch with MQTT to get it into Home Assistant. So what I'd like to do is change the topic, and that term is confusing, but it's kind of like the unique device name. And I like to give it kind of like a domain. So like I'll do SW underscore, and we'll do, just say this is MJ test. But I may put that as switch underscore living room or living room lamp or something like that, because that will show up in your router as that name. You'll know exactly what it is. Leave everything else the same. Of course, you do need a valid user ID and password that's going to be unique for everybody. And do make sure that your MQTT password, which if you're using the supervisor with Home Assistant, that's going to be your user IDs, that your ID and password need to be, I think it's 5 characters or more. Otherwise, it gives you a weird error and it won't connect to MQTT. Now, the configure Domo, whatever, the D word. No, not that one. But I don't use it. It's another home automation software, but you're welcome to go in there and go around and play with it, go read the docs, whatever. Configure timer. That's a really cool part. If you go in and set your latitude and longitude along with your time zone, you can do timers straight on the switch itself to do automations like turn on and off, say at dusk to dawn or whatever. And it's pretty cool, straight built in there. And it doesn't require some other automation server. It's like make a true smart switch. Now the logging, it's going to be just for doing a lot of debug stuff. And like the MQTT log level, the syslog, if you want to do that, the telemetry, if you want to dig into the logs, if you have an issue, but for the most part, if you don't, just leave this all default. You really don't have to worry about it. Now configure other. Now we're going to go over the templates. We'll do that last. The web admin password, that's to secure the web GUI. It's not a bad idea to put in your own little web admin password. That way someone can't be on your network and go change stuff with your switches if they really want to screw with you, you know, like siblings or they would never do that, right? Or kids. This is also where if you don't want to use MQTT, you can turn that off because you don't require to use MQTT. You could just use the GUI on these. And I have done that at people's houses with that timer. Now device name, I would set something there because that's actually going to pop up in Home Assistant as the name. You'll be able to see it. You just don't want to leave it Tasmota. You'll end up with a bunch of devices all saying Tasmota, and all the entities will be all Tasmota. Yeah, go in here and set this before you turn on MQTT or put your stuff in there. And then once you do all your configuration stuff, you can come in here and say backup configuration. That'll make a very small file and download that to your computer or device you're using. And the really cool part, pro tip here, say you've got 4 or 5 light bulbs that you need to set up and you don't feel like going through and setting all these and everything. You can just set one of them up, hit backup, then hit restore on the other ones and just change that unique name and rock and roll, and then it kind of saves you some time. So how do we fix this god-awful Sonoff Basic thing up here? Well, I want to run through how and why. I know a lot of people are wanting to just, hey, let me just go get a template and go get it off some weird website or my website or some other one that may be sketchy and no support. But let's go run through how things were and why first. So if you probably haven't been in here, configure module, some of you may have. Previously, in different versions, we didn't have a template. Now this was before the whole scene blew up with a bunch of switches and till you convert and the whole 9 yards. So it was really just a small handful of devices. It was fairly easy to manage. And so if you look in here, you'll notice the Sonoff Basic. You don't need a template for any of these devices. Just don't. I don't understand why someone would go get a template for, say, an S31. It's right here. You just go and pick it. And if you just pick it and then hit save, and that's it. Your device is configured. So, but what if you don't have, yours is not in the list, right? Now, before we could go in here and pick generic. And so I'm going to show you what generic is. So if we go back to configure module after it reboots, you'll notice we have a big list of this goobly gobbly GPIO things. Yeah, so don't confuse yourself. What that stands for is general purpose input output. And what that means kind of in layman's terms is think about it as just a bunch of pipes and communication channels. Now, it's an input. An input would be referenced as, say, a button or a switch because you're inputting data into the processor. Now, output would be data coming out of the processor. So that may be to an LED to turn a light on, to turn a relay on, to turn anything else on. It's just to signal something out of the processor. So you'll have multiple pipes that come out of the chip. And typically you'll see, say, this GPIO4, you'll have, say, a switch attached to it. Now, I'm not going to go over all of these ones because some of them, there's whole pull-ups involved, and there's rotaries, there's relays, LEDs, counters, buzz, all kinds of stuff. And yes, this one software handles all of that. The small little bin file, it's nuts. Down here, I2C, that's like temperature sensors, all kinds of stuff you can do to add into these different devices and dev boards and switches and everything. So, how do you know what yours has? And I don't know how to configure that. And well, I have done one, say you have a new device, there's some new device procedures. It's not too hard to do. Runs through and you kind of figure out which pins are in and out and what they control, and then you kind of mark it down and you go configure your template. Or if you already know the device, you go get it from somewhere, hope it works. I have a small list of ones that I maintain and keep up with. And if one is wrong, you can jump into Discord and say, hey, I need help with this one, and someone will help you out, and probably I'll help you out. So I'm looking for that Martin Jerry single pole. So here's that Martin Jerry single pole, and sometimes I'll have additional information on it. So you can just grab this template, copy it to your clipboard. Well, in the configuration, if you remember, it's not under configure template, it's under configure other, there's a template section. Just paste over this whole thing here, the one that I have on that web page. Do make sure you hit activate. and hit save. And you'll notice right above me, now we got a red LED. Now it is a little brighter in person just because red is not that great to pick up on a camera. But it's not too bright where it drives you nuts. It's a great little night light, just being able to see where the light switch is at. So at this point, you can come in here and hit toggle. I have a light bulb. And there it is. It blinds the camera and it turns on. Really works just fine. And if I wanted to, I can push the button and the light turns on and turns off. And because we have it configured for MQTT, if I jumped into Tasmota, all without me doing anything, there's my MJ test switch that I just named. And there it is. I can come in here and hit the switch. It turns on, turns off. I could hit add to Lovelace. Boom, straight into Home Assistant automatically with really you not having to do a thing. And then you could do automations with it with multi-press. I got a whole nother video on how to do the multi-press stuff where you can control stuff across the room with doing like a double press and long press, etc. That's really cool stuff. So what did that template do? Remember we pasted that in there. So it went in here and it did under configured template. It put in here all the LEDs, the relay, the buttons, etc. And it named it MJSO1 two-way switch, right? But I thought you said the modules control. They do. Check this out. Again, we didn't want to do any breaking changes, but we wanted to be able to add in different devices without having to hard code them into the bin file, which there's not a lot of space on these chips. But check this out. Now you have under module 0 your MJ two-way switch. Pretty slick, isn't it? So now you've added a module into the software without having to hard code it into the bin file. So that's how those template actually drives module 0. All those built-in ones are still there for you to pick, and it's all kind of dynamic, of course, for the module 0 one. So the ever important feature, and don't be scared of this one. It's very powerful and you will use it, but it's pretty simple to use for the most part. If you click on console, this is like the log. And I know you've done some stuff. People ask, well, hey, what's the log show? You know, but in usually log, you can just read it. Well, this allows you to interact with the switch. How cool is that? You can come in here and enter the commands. Well, what commands? Is there a help? No, you're not going to find a help built into the switch or whatever device it is, because remember, we don't have a lot of flash memory to store in just tons and tons of documentation, but hey, the internet's a great place for that. So if you go back to the Tasmota documentation, there is an entire commands list. It's pretty awesome and everything. It has lots of descriptions to it. If you don't know what an option is set on your switch and you're like, well, hey, I like that option. Well, maybe it's already turned on. Just put in that option without any value. And most of them will come back and show you the result. And just like it shows, hey, that's our template. And say, for instance, there's for doing the multi-press, or you want to do it where the fast reacting button. I know a lot of people don't know this one. So say if you push the button here, you see how it's got kind of a delay? What the reason why is it's waiting to see if you do a multi-press. Say if you don't even want to do multi-press. You can do SO13. And what is SO? It's not so, it's set option 13 space 1 for on. You can come in here and type in set option 13 out. I think you can't even type on. Well, I want to show you, like, say if I just type in SO13. See, it shows set option 13 is off. Well, I want to turn that on. So it comes back and says it's on. And now when I push the button, you'll see that it's fast reacting. It's pretty much instantaneous. It almost feels too fast in a way. But as soon as you press the button, it clicks that relay on. And it's pretty stupid fast. And a lot of people do want that. So that's just a small little example of what the power of the console can do. Go dig around, look through those commands. You can do all kinds of stuff with Tasmota in using the console. It's pretty damn powerful. So hopefully you've learned something today on Tasmota. We'll dig into some more of the little advanced stuff in Tasmota and show the true power of what you can do. If there's a particular subject or device or whatever that you're looking for some additional information or a little walkthrough on Tasmota to do, definitely shoot us a comment down below and maybe we'll go through and try to do a video based on some of the results, kind of like a poll type thing. And I appreciate all the Tasmota developers and of course all the Patreon subscribers and everybody for helping bring new projects and videos to the channel each week.
Goodbye. Press all of the buttons and y'all take care.